Go. 10.
They took man into space, but never left the Earth.
Eagle Houston, you're go for landing, over.
They flew every flight
Hang on.
from right here on the ground.
We had to pull missions literally out of the fire, make the right things happen, and bring these crews back home.
They are the men of Mission Control, engineers who took the dream of spaceflight and made it reality.
That's one small step for man.
You just didn't say, we can't do this, we can't do that. You made it happen.
Flight Director Gene Kranz and the men of Mission Control tell their story for the first time.
Comward, word, no go.
And I almost shook my head in fear.
We were losing our oxygen.
Harrison, we've had a problem.
The CIA came rushing in.
No one was to talk about it, no one was to know about it.
They were trapped.
You cannot operate in this room unless you believe you're a Superman and whatever happens, you're capable of solving the problem.
History was made in this room. Apollo Mission Control in Houston. It's silent now, but there was a time when it hummed with electricity. From this console, Flight Director Gene Kranz led his controllers in life and death struggles, landing on the moon for the first time,
That's one small step.
bringing a crippled ship safely home.
Harrison, we've had a problem.
Fate brought Gene Kranz to this place, made him an actor on this stage. The long journey to put him here began years earlier with a young boy's dream. The dream of flight.
I had been standing in the tops of trees, and I just sway back and forth. And this was part of this adventure kind of thing. My brother-in-law got one of the pilots in there to give me a ride, and it was just like I died and gone to heaven. I was an eagle. I was soaring. I was flying. That day it just captured me, and it's never left me.
The young boy's dream would soon come true, but the silver wings that would carry Gene Kranz aloft were born not of laughter, but fire. In 1949, the Soviet Union explodes a nuclear bomb. America and the Soviets become locked in a terrifying standoff, a Cold War. The two sides appear evenly matched, but on October the 4th, 1957, America suffers a stunning defeat. Gene Kranz is an Air Force pilot in Korea when he gets the news.
We came down from a flight one day, and we got the word that the Soviet Union had launched a satellite called Sputnik.
Russia already has nuclear weapons. Now they have the world's first satellite, an unstoppable machine flying directly over the U.S. Can it spy, take pictures? Can it drop a bomb? 4 weeks later, another Sputnik. A hostile power is advancing into space, perhaps to control the planet.
It is quite possible that an aggressor nation that dominates space will then dominate the world. We just can't let that happen.
Overnight, Russia has made space the new battlefield in the Cold War. To compete, America creates NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Its mission, fly an American in space as soon as possible. This campaign will be led not by generals, but by engineers. At any other time, these men would have had unremarkable careers. Now, world events have put them at the center of a desperate struggle. Few will ever be known to the public, but they will become the unsung heroes of the race to the moon. After leaving the Air Force, Gene Kranz joins this new army of engineers and meets a man who will shape his life, Christopher Columbus Kraft.
He was the mentor, the teacher, the tutor. Chris Kraft was the architect not only of mission control, but basically the entire concept for spaceflight operations.
Kraft is charged with designing the flight plan for Project Mercury, the program to fly an American into space.
I don't think that suddenly some morning I woke up and said, oh, we're going to have a mission control center. That term never crossed my mind. It wasn't until I began to think about the details that I realized the importance that the ground would play in this operation.
Doctors don't know if a human will be able to function in space. And even if he can, the machine will be moving too fast for the pilot to make decisions.
Kraft recognized that flying a spacecraft 5 miles per second really doesn't allow much time for equivocation. And we'd be the guys on the ground who had to come up with the answers if they ran into problems.
It's a revolutionary concept, flight control from the ground. The idea is straightforward, but it's never been done. As they start trying to make it reality, the details raise more and more questions.
How often do you want to talk to this thing as it goes around the Earth? What do you need to know where it is? If I've got to be prepared to bring it down any place around the world, what am I going to do about that?
Since communication satellites don't yet exist, Kraft will need a global network of ground stations to track the spacecraft and talk to the astronaut.
How do they know what's going on? How do they know what to do? There needed to be a place where decisions had to be made and distributed. Now, my goodness, I do need a central facility.
That facility will soon become Mercury Control. While Kraft's team is planning it, other NASA engineers at Cape Canaveral, Florida, are facing challenges of their own. Space is a political contest. To some, America's embarrassing rocket failures are symbolic of national weakness.
The question was whether we in the United States had really fallen behind in science and technology, not just in the space program.
On April 12, 1961, the Russians drive the point home.
The spaceship was built in Russia. The takeoff and the landing somewhere in Russia. The name of the man, Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin.
When Yuri Gagarin becomes the first man in space, it is the biggest Russian triumph since Sputnik.
They secured these large boosters, which have led to them putting their man in space. We are, I hope, going to be able to carry out our efforts this year, but we are behind.
When the Russians flew first, now the pressure on the United States was probably tenfold what it was before that.
May 5th, 1961. Newly completed Mercury Control will attempt to send astronaut Alan Shepard into space. Shepard's flight can't match the Soviets. He won't even reach orbit. But it will be done live, in full view of the world.
Somebody said to me, we're going to have this operation done as it happens on national television. And, you know, I almost shook my head in fear because that's something I'd never been faced with before.
6, 5, 2, 1, 9 north, longitude 60, 48 minus. What was the first? The first one was 1, 8, latitude 20.
There is flame underneath the bird. There goes the red sky.
Shepard's flight will last only 15 minutes, but it's 15 minutes